Today is May the 11th, and you're going to get to hear an original Patroma Therapy story called Drop and Roll. Are we ready to roll?
Oh, yes, we are.
Very good then. You'll see on our cover shot a wonderful work of digital art by one of our good friends, Lydia, and I hope that you'll enjoy looking at the art and listening to the story. Drop and roll. She peered into his cell. He was pacing and muttering. She noted the time on her chart, which was attached to the clipboard on the wall. 11:11 a.m. It didn't matter to her what he said. He was unbelievable, unreliable. She turned and walked away, heels clicking as she disappeared down a hallway. When she peered through the eye hole, he saw her mischievous stare, gave her a small hand wave, and cautiously approached the door. "What's with the high heels?" he asked her, even though it was absolutely impossible for him to see what she was wearing. "She'll be miserable by nightfall," he thought, feeling desire to leave the cell and touch her feet. He was crazy. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." Well, then why bother? Better to let them dig through his silence for clues. What crime had he committed? He only followed her home and watched her undress at night. He looked up to her window on the second floor of the Brooklyn brownstone. He only followed her to dinner at Cafe Steinhoff, which was on the corner. He only ordered a goulash and one beer. The bread was warm when it arrived at his table near the front window. He buttered the bread with his favorite knife. He liked that table because from that perch he could watch her leave. He loved being silent, though some people found it abusive. She thought so too, especially when he remained silent when she had tried to reach him. "One day you will realize what your main problem is," he said and continued, "Would it bother you if I—" But she was already gone. He knew where she lived, but her house didn't feel like home to him. It made him question his sanity. Her house felt like an abandoned insane asylum. Everything in it drove him crazy. Only he was not the crazy one. Time to check on him again. She walked a different way around some other cells. One guy whistled at her as she passed by. Was it a crime to wear heels to work and a slim skirt and a red sweater under her white jacket? Men are such animals, she thought to herself. When she reached his cell, she saw him stretched out on his long bench, not in his bed. She made a note of that on the paper. The rules were to be in bed by 11 p.m. She glanced at her watch. It was 11:11. Violation. She was a real bitch, and he liked it. Was her name Wendy? Maybe it was Donna. Could have been Jessica for all he cared. Yes, she was a narcissistic, selfish bitch, and yet she had the right to be one because her life had been totally shattered by all kinds of sins. Recently, she confessed to him that she had fallen in love with a no. He couldn't even imagine such an atrocity. Even though he realized by the time that this woman was capable of more than he could even think. "She has anxiety," he muttered, recollecting a history of abuse that she had. Well, luckily not on his account. And she's a sinner with a capital S. We are not punished for our sins. We are punished by our sins. They tear up the fabric of our life, he remembered, as he fiddled with the edge of the blanket. He'd heard a priest say that once upon a time when he went to church. She was always hungover or passed out on Sunday mornings. He walked by her asleep on the couch. He looked at her face and her hair. Sinners sleep in and miss Mass. Mea culpa. She had a lot of clothes to choose from, dresses, blouses, etc., but her favorite have always been dark wash jeans and some clingy sweater with black loafers. She just looked her best when she was comfortable. She knew that she could easily seduce any powerful man, and she was used to it. And when she'd seen him for the first time, seducing him was rather a reflex. Only in his case, everything was different. From the very first moment, she immediately felt safe without having tried to control him. Later, it got worse. Images of him would constantly appear in her mind. His eyes, his face, his words, his gestures, until one day he called upon her all the demons imaginable. They went for dinners. They flew away on ski vacations. She let down her guard. He bought her clothes at all the boutiques. He let her pick out jewelry. She agreed to do whatever he wanted to do in the bedroom. She felt important. He stretched out on the bench in his cell, thinking about what she said. They had some favorite songs. The words of the tunes tumbled through his mind. Hotel California. Nothing Else Matters. Famous Blue Raincoat. He liked Metallica. She liked Leonard Cohen and Vivaldi. When they first met, he thought of her as super smart, borderline genius, and he loved smart women, even though she seemed too good to be true. Time passed, but he still felt absolutely enamored. They met at a coffee shop. She had Lavazza, and he wouldn't have noticed her unless the familiar brand caught his eye. Also, she paid in cash. She noticed that he noticed, and he noticed that she noticed it too. What was the name of your first pet? He almost asked her, but managed to stop just prior. His social skills weren't that great after all. Perhaps he needed some therapy. Sometimes it's hard to tell when one thing ends and another begins. Why did they argue all the time? What were the fights all about? Who started which fight? Why the days of silence between the fights? Does anyone win an argument, or is it an unresolved conflict balled up and rolled forward into the next fight? He had heard that the Canadian songsmith Gordon Lightfoot died on May the 1st, 2023. River of Darkness Over Me. He liked that song. He liked his last name, Lightfoot. Not everyone is light of foot. Again, he heard the sound of heels clicking down a hallway outside of his cell. Lightfoot was married once to a lady named Elizabeth Moon. How strange to be married to the moon. Would you be interested in having an affair? She asked. She paused and continued. Well, it's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. So I wanted to say it so I don't have to think about it anymore. He didn't answer. Well, I guess I got my answer, she said. No, it's, I just don't think I could, he started. But it was too late. Everything drove him crazy, yet he was not the crazy one. He recycled that thought. It was too late to contemplate an affair because in his mind they were already together. Action starts in the mind. Sin begins in the mind. He had not done anything. He was innocent. It was a cold day. In fact, it was the coldest day on record for the past 20 years. He sat shivering in his car. He was dressed in an expensive suit. But right now he looked more like a bum poet. Dragged down tie, undone collar, unruly hair. He held a cigar between his lips and a half-full bottle of whiskey in his left hand. He'd always been a southpaw, as they say in the martial art racket. The mobile phone suddenly jangled from the passenger seat where he had dropped it an hour ago. He shifted his bulk body and stared at it. That's bad, he thought. But it's her who dug her grave good and deep, not me. She wanted to yell, cry, open her eyes, and yet she knew that she would wake up only to find out that she'd been in some strange and horrible nightmare. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was real and it was happening to her. The moon rose like a pale pearl. So did he. Thoughts cycled through his mind, what to do, where to go next. One choice ruled out others. Sometimes he stared out of the window to the street below, paralyzed. The people on the street looked like blind ants, but there was a pattern to their movements. Who was calling out the order for the ants to march? He remembered his days of marching and peeling potatoes during his military service. Who is he serving? How can so many men eat so many potatoes? His only joy was his Zippo lighter, which she stole from him. Men have always loved women, any beautiful women. They do and they always will. So he made the same mistake, only he made it 5 times. He had fallen in love with 5 women at the same time. As I said, he made the same mistake. Love is the key word here. He loved them all. That's what he lived for. That's why he almost died. Yet she never knew about the women he loved. Well, not that he didn't love her. On the contrary, she was the one he loved most. She was the one. But if she did know, she would never let him love the others. Above her own body, she hovered whenever they were together. She left him again and again. She recalled peacocks wandering through a garden near to gray mesquite trees and fuchsia azalea scrubs. She thought about alligators sleeping in shallow ponds in the central courtyard of an old hotel where rocking chairs sat empty. Look at me, he ordered. Blankly, she stared into his eyes. No one could tell who was in control. Why should anyone be afraid of owls or crows? A flock of birds, but a murder of crows? Can a flight of birds portend the future? She wondered about these things as she poured her coffee. Before battle, the Greeks cut open an animal, taking out the heart. The heart of the animal could tell the outcome of the battle, if the augur was skilled enough in reading. Do you remember how we first met? She asked. He looked over at the clock and took 2 little sips from the whiskey glass. She was making him get mad. Luckily, his memory was a little hazy. He took another sip of whiskey and it became officially foggy. No, he answered, I don't remember. She was a tall woman with square shoulders, a narrow waist, and thick hips. I'd be surprised if you did, she observed and laughed quietly, or maybe yawned. She couldn't tell this man from Adam, even if she wanted to. She liked to tease him and call him Mada. Once he asked for a picture of her legs, and she sent him a photo of a painting by Magritte. The upper half a fish, the lower half the legs of a woman. He texted back, that's not funny. The painting was called Collective Invention and was painted in 1934.